City of Stevens Point Public Policy and General Government Meeting, recorded April 12, 2021.
Up next is Public Policy and General Government. Chair Jennings, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I call the Public Policy and General Government meeting to order at 6:09. We have a quorum. Our first item on the agenda is the license list. We'll take each one of these individually. The first one is a temporary extension of license premise for Ruby Colorful Coffees. This will be an extension of premises for a parklet running from April 1st through October 31st. Chief Zinner, I think you're here. Do you have any concerns?
The chief was booted out. He's coming back in right now.
Okay, we'll proceed. Any questions from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Bringing back to the committee.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are we still covered under the open public intoxicants no matter what, as far as geographically? And would this then just open it up for us for a different time slot then?
That's a great question. And my understanding of the extension of premises is that would apply to you. Mayor, could you confirm one way or the other?
So the extension of premises refers to only the ability to serve within that boundary. If someone were to, for example, go to Top Hat, grab a Bloody Mary, come to Ruby and grab a breakfast sandwich, and then go sit in the picnic area, that wouldn't be covered under your extension of premise. Only if you serve that alcoholic beverage would it be covered under that zone.
Understood.
All right, thank you. What are your wishes, committee? Alder Nabel.
Thank you, Chair. I vote to approve the temporary extension of the license premise for the Ruby Colorful Coffees from the dates of April 1st through October 31st, 2021.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. A second?
Alder Fischler, a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay or no. Motion carries. Next is license list B, temporary extension of license premise for Stevens Point Brewery / Cider Boys Cider Company, 2617 Water Street. Chief Zinner, there you are. Any comments or anything on this? Concerns?
Sorry, I got kicked out. I had a little problem with my computer, but no issues on B.
Does the committee have any questions for the chief? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I bring it back to the committee. What are your wishes?
Kneebone will move to approve.
Do we have a second? Alder Nabel. So we have a motion by Kneebone, second by Alder Nabel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. C is a change of agent. This is Sherrill Sales Corporation. 2201 Madison Street. Any concerns, questions from the committee on this? This is kind of normal business. All right, what are your wishes?
Lee Carroll, move to approve the change of agent.
A second? Alder Nabel. So a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Motion carries. D is a Class B beer license for Northwood Pedal and Paddle at Iverson Park Office Building. Chief Center?
No concerns.
Any questions for the chief from the committee?
Is this a new thing? I don't think I've encountered this at Iverson before, so I maybe, I'm not sure if this is a novelty or no.
I believe this is a new thing.
It is.
Alder Nabel?
Is there a date on this for when this is going to be occurring, or like a one-time thing, or?
It's beginning April 20th.
Till,
There's not an end date on the beer license, but this pedal and paddle, this is going to be a seasonal thing. It looks like the mayor has an idea.
But it's not an idea. It's just when you grant a license like this, it's a license, just like any other Class B license. So I don't see it happening, but they could, in theory, sell beer in December. Again, I don't think that's going to happen.
Thank you for that clarification. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I bring it back to the committee. What are your wishes?
another question.
Okay, Alder Nabel has another question.
Sorry. I'm sorry to ask this, but since this is something new, I'm not used to selling beers at our parks, our park offices, unless it's been for like a specific weekend or something like that. So this is really brand new. They're going to be doing this, I guess, where's the office building at Iverson Park? Does anybody know?
Mayor, go ahead, please.
Director Kramer is currently out of town attending a town of hall meeting on behalf of the city, so I'll respond for him. This is formerly the building that Nature's Niche was using. Nature's Niche, they rented bikes, kayaks, canoes, that sort of thing. So as you're driving down Highway 10 and you look off to your right past the entrance, there's a large stone building towards the east end of the park. That's where the office is going to be. But you are right. This is pretty new. We haven't allowed any business, and they lease the property from us, so it's a private business. It's not the city doing it, but we haven't had businesses selling alcoholic beverages within the park, although I haven't heard any objection from our parks director or any member of our parks committee either.
Are we liable then for those, or anything like that of underagers or?
Go ahead.
Sorry, to continue on. No, we would not be. They would be the responsible unit. They would be responsible for the people that they serve, checking identifications, making sure they don't serve anyone who has already maybe had a few too many or been overserved. It puts the responsibility solely on this the business, in this case, Northwood Pedal and Paddle. The city does not assume responsibility for that license.
Leak here. Have we had any, so Pedal and Paddle, you can get a beer and get in a canoe. Is that the idea? Okay. I'm a little concerned about, I guess, glass ending up in the Plover River. Or
you've also got what I believe to be the applicant here, Patrick Gatterman, chair. So if you maybe want to call on him.
Thank you. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. And I always try to be very respectful and not and let debate go through. So we've been in business in 2015. Yeah, we have a 3-year contract with the city to operate the buildings within Iverson. And that's for the purpose of recreational rentals in addition to concessions. So within that, that's actually part of the purpose of applying for a Class B beer license, is because when people come and rent kayaks, typically they ask, can we bring beverages? and we cannot control other than we make the statement of, hey, please don't have glass in the Plover River. And in addition, we try to say, hey, please don't overindulge. Well, we've learned within history, as well as the state of Wisconsin, other renters like us, other entities, it's better if we control the alcohol. So therefore, anybody rents from us, we would serve them, meaning they can buy from us. We can say, hey, we don't serve any glass. If you are a party of two, we're not going to sell you 2 24 packs. So it allows a safer trip down the river. That's the purpose behind it. But I can answer any other questions anyone has.
Thank you.
And actually, I just want to add one more thing is, so there are, we're in Iverson. They do sell beer at Iverson as well. They sell it at Buchholz and they sell it at Zenoff. So they are done through like baseball leagues. So we're not unique as far as, selling beer. They have a Class B beer license as well. We're just a private entity versus like they have like the Legion Club or something like that. That'd be the biggest difference. But they do sell in other parks currently as well.
Thank you. I see that Alder Leek has a question of the applicant. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I wanted to confirm you'll be selling in the form of cans.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion for the Class B beer license for Northward Paddle and Pedal? Pedal and Paddle, sorry.
Leak here, I'll move to approve.
All right, we have a motion. A second. I see Alder Fischler.
That's fine.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Alder Fischler.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3. This is a request to hold event street closing. The first, we'll take these individually. Jefferson Elementary School track meet on May 17th. They have set up a rain date of the 20th. This is to give kids an experience of track, and they will close down the street. Lost my notes. They're asking to close down the street between Wyatt and East Avenue. Chief Zenner, what comments do you have?
Looking at the map, we'd prefer Oak Street instead of Jefferson. I'm not sure if there's some type of restriction that would preclude that, but that's obviously a less busy street, Jefferson Street being a thoroughfare. Could see using Jefferson Street possibly as a contingency. I mean, I want to restrict this event from taking place, but would prefer Oak Street be utilized instead.
Thank you for those comments. Do we have the applicant?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead, please.
I looked at Oak Street, so I'm the fire teacher over at Jefferson, and we looked at Oak Street. However, the concern came up with construction and then the morning drop off, because mostly the construction, because the construction entrance is on that side. So there's a lot of trucks coming in and out on that entrance and exit for the construction site. That was our reasoning for the Jefferson block there. But we are flexible as far as where we can have it.
I'm sorry, Chief Zenner, with that information, do you have any additional comments or?
Is there any, is this construction at the school or on the roadway there?
It's the construction at the school, but they're getting deliveries quite often. When I have outdoor classes, you can see the trucks coming and going quite often throughout the day, and trying to make sure the safety of the kids
Yeah, we're talking about 4 hours though, correct?
Yeah, roughly. It'll be done by, trying to think of my time slot. By 9:30 is my last class would be leaving that. So we would be done shortly after that.
I'd still stick with my recommendation if we could coordinate with the construction, possibly delay. If we're talking 4 hours, it'd be more feasible, I would think, to have it on Oak Street. If you run into a jam, I could see Jefferson Street still being a contingency.
That's fine. We can make Oak Street work. Would you still recommend Wyatt to east, or would you be okay with us then going further? Because we could leave the construction open if we went a little bit further down the road, like halfway between Wyatt and east, and then further down to, I think, is that Reserve? I don't remember what that next road would be.
I think Wyatt and East, you're going to be running into residents and driveways if you move outside of that space. If you kept it between Wyatt and East, it's either you or St. Paul school, which I don't think will restrict either of the schools to operate if you kept within that that barricaded area.
Okay. We can do that.
All right, thank you. So we're, the application is changing to Oak Street, and the school will provide barriers, correct, Laura?
Yeah, I have cones I can put out along with our school signs, so I can take care of that.
Thank you, Alex. And the remains of a Wisconsin Korean War veteran are fine.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or any questions from the committee for the applicant or Chief Zinner? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I bring it back to the committee. What are your wishes? Alder Nabel?
Thank you. I move to approve that request but having it on Oak Street instead of on Jefferson Street for the school track meet on May 17th and rain date of May 20th.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with amended location. A second, please.
Alder Fischler, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Next is the Stevens Point Brewery Block Party on June 12th. This is a new event. It's partly in response to COVID as a way to get more people outside. There will be beer trailers and a 50 area. The individuals purchasing beer will have on a wristband. The closure for the street is marked in your packet. Chief Zinner, any question or any concerns on this?
No, the coordinator has been in touch with Lieutenant Mueller. We would require 2 officers on contractual be on site. The discussion was, I believe there was 2 to 4 tents, and each one would be individually barricaded in a sense. Also, looking at the map, it looked like they were food trucks would be parked on Water Street, and wondering if the organizer would be able to relocate those within the parking lot, so we don't need people walking. Even though the street would be closed, we won't be having them walk across the street and on sidewalks. We can contain it within that grass area where the event will be held.
Is the applicant on the Zoom meeting? Let's see here. Okay, so Chief, you're recommending that the food trucks be moved off Water Street onto the...
Correct. Looking at the map, it appears they have a couple locations, parking lots, where it seems more feasible if they were located within there, then they'd be able to contain the patrons in that confined area instead of walking into the street and potentially into neighborhoods in that area.
Would you be comfortable with a conditional approval and the applicant could follow up with the clerk? Would that be acceptable
Yes.
to you? Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. What are your wishes?
Kneebone will move to approve with the stipulation that the food trucks be moved off Water Street into the grassy parking area, the gravel parking area.
Okay, do we have a second?
Alder Fischler, I'll second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. C is UWSP spring commencement on May 21st and 22nd. This is a new event. Also, I believe a response to COVID as a way to get people outside in the open air. Any questions from the chief? This is one of your colleagues as the organizer.
I talked with Chief Bobble and they seem to have an excellent plan and be able to maintain this area within the university. No problems.
Thank you. And I'm pretty sure they have barricades. What are your wishes, committee?
Lee Gear, I'll move it. Or move the, oh, I'm sorry, the
Commencement.
commencement. Yes, I don't know why that word was escaping me. Commencement.
Or having it, the street closing for the commencement.
Street closing for the commencement, yes.
We have a motion. Second, please.
Kneebone will second, but in 91, we had our graduation out there in the sundial. So I would not say this is a new event. It's just maybe 30 years delayed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, no. Motion carries. Next one is the Arts Walk on May 14th, July 14th and September 1st. This is a recurring event. I think they've added a date, however. We're all familiar with this event. Great downtown event for the city. Any comments, Chief Center? This is
No concerns from the PD.
okay. And I'm certain that the applicant knows that they provide the barriers, the barricades. Any comments from the committee? Anyone from the public? Bringing it back to the committee, what are your wishes?
Alder Fischler, I'll move approval for the, is it just for the, is there not a street closure, right? It's just the approval for the event for the
It is
arts
the
walk?
street closure. It is the street closure. That's what we're approving.
I didn't say that on the agenda, sorry.
Okay, thanks. All right.
So art walk on May 14th, July 14th, and September 1st of 2021.
Okay, great. Do we have a second?
Leak, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 4. This is a beekeeper permit by, I'm sorry to, how I'm saying your name, Kit Swakey, I believe, and I believe he is on the call. This is a permit for 709 Hoffmeister Drive. I'm very familiar with this area. So if the applicant is here, would you like to make any comments about this application?
Yeah, Kit here. Single hive, first time, talked to the neighbors where the hive is going to be closest to, and they're okay with it. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. Any questions from the committee for the applicant? Any? Any questions from or comments from the public? Bringing it back to the committee, what are your wishes?
Lee here, I'll move to, see if I can remember the words this time, approve the beekeeping application of Kitswecki.
Thank you. Second. Alder Nabel is seconding it. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Good luck with your bees.
Thanks, everybody.
Item number 5 is No Mow May. And this agenda item was first brought forward by Alder Zarazua, who I was hoping would be able to comment on this, but I understand that she is excused. So I will turn it over to either Director Konofsky. Could you speak to this item, please?
Absolutely. So something that's been happening more frequently through the nation as we come out of our cold winters and into our summers is to allow for the month of May, if municipalities have lawn mowing or grass keeping ordinances, to waive those ordinances and allow natural grasses to grow in order to help to benefit the bee population and the pollinator populations. And so at the request of Alder Zarazua, through conversation with Mayor Wiesa, the Community Development Department has put together a No Mow May package before you, in which folks can sign up to be a part of the No Mow May month. They would be receiving a sign from the city indicating to neighbors or to passerbyers, this is why this property is not currently being maintained to what would be considered more traditional standard. It's because of No Mow May, and you can go to this website, which I believe will be stevenspoint.com/no-mow to get more information on it. We are requiring that folks sign up before May 1st. They must have everything taken care of by the end of May, i.e. they would have to mow their grass at the end of May. Otherwise, the city would have to go in and abate the long grasses. That's part of a larger sign up that we're working on right now through like a Google form so that we can keep a track of who's participating, who's not participating, so that if you're not participating and you just choose not to mow your lawn, you are still subject to receiving notice and abatement if that were to occur. So we've thought this through pretty thoroughly, feel as though we can accommodate this for the month of May. Staff does recommend approval. More than happy to answer any other questions that the committee may have.
So there is a web page being created that will provide information, and you're creating a easy, convenient way for people to sign up. My question is, will there be signs available, or do applicants make their own sign?
No, we are having a number of signs made up. I believe they're being donated to us through Spectra Print. And so when someone signs up, someone from the Community Development Department, either one of the building inspectors or Mark Cordes, would go out and place a sign in your yard. So there's uniform signage that we provided throughout the city.
Any questions for the director from the committee? And then we'll go to the public, please. From the committee first.
I just have a comment. I think this is a great idea. In fact, I'm going to plant some native plants in my backyard this summer to encourage pollinators and butterflies to come in. And I've been not treating dandelions because I know as they come up, they're some of the first things that the bees need to survive. So I'll be applying for a sign for my yard. I think this is a great idea, and I appreciate the department coming up with a packet to make it easy to identify and not let folks slide that aren't at least signed up to participate.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? Moving to the public, I see Mr. Ware has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bob Weir, 727 Second Street. I read through the packet, and apparently Mark Cordis or somebody from Community Development has contacted Appleton. There's several recommendations that are in that memo that's in your packet from, I believe, Mark Cordis and the mayor. I have several concerns. Number one, obviously, this is going to cost the city staff the requirement to register these people, get them signed up, possibly having to extend the hours at the drop-off site. I don't know whether the street department has the staff to handle the excess stuff coming back in. The other concern that I have is that particularly those of us that live within a couple of blocks of the river, we have historically had mallard ducks nesting in our flower beds. It happens quite frequently. If this grass is allowed to grow to, as mentioned in the memo, up to 18 inches, there is a very strong possibility that ducks will nest in yards rather than in flower beds. And it is a violation, I believe, of federal law to disturb the nest of migratory birds, i.e. ducks. And so, this is something I'm sure that Appleton doesn't deal with because they don't have a river running, as we do here in Stevens Point. So I'm just concerned about the additional burden on staff, both community development or whoever issues these, takes in these applications. The signs, director stated that he's having them donated, but then additional staff to keep the drop-off site open extended hours to take in everything on the 1st of June. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Alder Slowinski.
I guess I'd like to echo what Mr. Weir said, as well as I guess one of the concerns that I have regarding this, I think it's a great idea, if we can promote nature. But through the years as an alder, I have fielded several complaints, of the neighbor's not taking care of his property and his weeds are bleeding onto my property. And now I need to hire somebody to come and take care of, some people don't like the weeds or they call them weeds, native species, whatever you want to call them. I'm just concerned that, you're going to have issues with neighbors, complaining about their other neighbors, that their yards these weeds are bleeding into other yards. And I'm really concerned of that. And I feel that these negative impacts that could result override the benefits of this idea. So I guess just my comments. Thanks.
Mayor Reza.
I'm just going to comment. We've talked with staff. There is minimal additional time required for staff. Mr. Cordis is going to be out doing his normal job anyway. Putting a sign in someone's yard is not going to take that much time. The additional staff that's going to be required for extended hours at drop off at the end of May, again, is minimal, and we can support that. The signs are donated, so the cost would be almost nothing. And as far as the nesting ducks, the ducks are nesting right now. By June, they will be done nesting.
Thank you. Unless there's any other comments from the public, I'll bring it back to Director Karnofsky and Mark as well. If you'd like to respond to the concerns that were raised, please.
One of the biggest complaints we always get is from neighbors and neighbor disputes. whether it's in May or August or September, we deal with these types of disputes on a daily basis. It is not uncommon for one neighbor to call who let's say as an example, a particular neighbor fertilizes their lawn and their neighbor next door doesn't, and they get angry because there's a number of dandelions that are floating across and into their adjoining yard. In those situations, as long as the property is the adjacent property that may have a number of weeds or dandelions is being maintained, mowed on a regular basis, there's really nothing the city can do. And we always encourage the neighbors to reach out to their neighbors to work out their disputes. Really also no different than when in September or October or November, when leaves get blown onto adjacent neighbor's property, and we get complaints that, well, my neighbors, their leaves are now on my property and I just took care of raking. We really encourage those folks to reach out to their neighbors directly. I don't foresee this being a huge thing in the city this first year around. Maybe I'll be surprised when we get a number of properties, but I think that those who are going to be interested in doing it, the number is going to be not minimal, but will be less impactful than I think than what we're thinking. So other than that, again, staff is still very supportive of it, and I think the mayor addressed the other concerns about the nesting ducks.
Thank you, Mr. Cordes, and then Attorney Beveridge, please.
The only thing I'll add is I did talk to the city of Appleton at length, and a lot of these recommendations are lessons learned from their experiment last year. And one of the big ones was they didn't have a high level of compliance on June 1st. So by having people sign up, and when they sign up with that agreement, we don't have to go through our typical abatement process in which we'd have to send them out a letter and then wait another week before we go back and do a reinspection. If we go there on June 2nd and it's not cut, by signing that agreement, they're agreeing to allow us to go in and abate that. So from a staff perspective, that would probably be the biggest in the way of, our time. And that's really streamlining the process if they don't comply.
Thank you. Attorney Beveridge.
I just wanted to note that the city of Appleton does have a river. That would be the Fox River.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? And I'm looking for a motion, please.
Alder Fischler, I'd move for approval for no mow May.
Lee Carroll, second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6 is ordinance amendment, chapter 30 of the building code rewrite. Massive thing. I'll let Director Karnowski take this on, please.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. So before you tonight is a chapter 30 rewrite. Chapter 30 is the city's building code section, which really hasn't been addressed for a number of years and a few decades probably. It encompasses a number of regulations and regulatory agencies that no longer exist or are no longer applicable. So thanks to Building Inspection Superintendent DJ Schneider for spending the last few years and really putting this whole thing together. I won't get into the nitty-gritty details, but this is part of the requirement that we have to make this update in order to maintain our delegated municipality status, meaning that we can do a number of our own plan reviews internally as opposed to sending everything down to the state. So if there's any questions on the specifics, I would defer that to Inspection Superintendent Schneider, who's also on the call tonight.
Any questions for the inspector? Alder Nabel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, we were at one time, it talked about when we were going to get a chapter to look at, that we would get sections of it instead of a whole chapter to review, to be able to make decisions on. My concern is just that it's hard to make sure that we've got everything in here. I don't know. I thought we were going to look at it in sections, and that doesn't seem to appear to have happened.
Chair
It's
Jennings.
a little bit harder, I guess, to make decisions on all of it at once.
If I may, Chair, Alder Nabel, the the Public Policy General Government, formerly the Public Protection Committee, decided on the Chapter 21 rewrite that we'd bring that back in sections. And actually the motion was made and approved that we'd bring it back once the city was meeting in person again. So that was more specific to Chapter 21, which I think is going to be much more intense because it does include a lot of subjective items as opposed to objective, which is what Chapter 30 really is. The Chapter 30 update really reflects what's within the Universal Dwelling Code and updating a number of the state agencies and requirements that we've just not addressed the last several decades. I think Chapter 21, yes, we need to be bringing that back in sections. I believe that Chapter 30 is broad enough and already regulated enough through state agencies that we should be able to adopt it as a whole.
Thank you for explaining that. And that is correct. It was Chapter 21 that we did talk about. And as I did look through this, it did seem like it was pretty uniform of what, you know, you would normally do for plumbing and electrical and everything else. So that's the only thing I had. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Dalton, and then we'll go to the public, please.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. I guess I just want to request that the changes, the agenda I'm looking at off the website doesn't have a comparative or edited chapter of the code on it. So it's very difficult to see what the actual changes are. And I think for any one of us here on the council, let alone a community member who's trying to understand the specific language of the code that's being changed, and for comparative effect, those changes should be articulated in the agenda so that people can see what exactly is being changed.
Thank you. Mr. Ware.
Okay, Bob, we're 727 2nd Street. Let me make a couple of comments first. Subsection 03(3) refers to the historic overlay district. And you, Chair, being on the Historic Preservation Commission, are aware that any exterior modifications to a building within the historic districts has to first obtain a certificate of compliance, or I forget the exact word, but anyway, even to repaint the exterior of a house or to apply paint to the exterior house has to be first approved by the Historic Preservation Design Review Commission prior to issuance of a building permit. What is before you tonight just basically it says that any modifications to the exterior of a house in the historic districts has to, and it references, I believe, doors, windows, etc. You have to obtain a building permit. It says nothing about first obtaining a certificate from the Historic Preservation Commission before a building permit can even be issued. If a building permit is required, and in painting as an example, you don't need a building permit, but you do need the approval of the Historic Preservation Commission. Another thing on licensing for electrical work, section 101.862(6), I believe it is, of the Department of Safety and Professional Services Administrative Code states that, and again, this is only an example, states that a person in volunteer status building a home, example, Habitat for Humanity, does not need a license to do the electrical work in that building, provided the building is being constructed by a 501c3 organization, i.e. Habitat for Humanity, and it's within their area of operation. There are several other items that I spotted, and it was basically just a cursory review of the proposed ordinance. But I would strongly recommend that the council hold off on approving at this point in time, and staff possibly asking several of the professional builders within the community to review it also and come up with some of these other items that are not in compliance with state statutes or state admin code. That's my recommendation. Don't approve it tonight. Study it, and the members of the council, I'm sure, I don't think that any of the members of the council are professional carpenters or electricians or plumbers, and you would be approving something based upon the recommendation of staff. And I have full confidence in the staff, but there are things in there that are not correct.
Okay, we have the idea. Thank you. And I'll allow staff to respond to that in a moment. Attorney Beveridge, is your hand up?
Yes, first with regards to Alder Dalton's comment about having a red line version of this, I can certainly understand the desire for that. However, this is more akin to a full rescinding and recodification of the chapter. It would essentially be, here's the entirety of the thing with strike through, and here's the entire new thing. It would be a document that has more red in it than black. I think certainly a more practical approach would be to just pull up the existing ordinance and compare them side by side. When Mr. Schneider sent me the draft of this, even just the version I sent back with my comments and changes to it had an awful lot of red ink. So I think showing it in that format of tracked changes, it would just be really cumbersome to read. Secondly, getting to Mr. Weir's comments about historic, if you look to 30.01, literally the second page of this, part 3 regarding conflict, 3B there indicates that nothing in chapter 30 would ever be construed to prevent the enforcement of other ordinances, which obviously would include our historic preservation ordinance. The reason that the phrase or the section he quoted is worded the way it is that that section is making reference to exterior items for which a building permit is required, and saying, by the way, in addition to the building permit, you would also have to get this certificate. That doesn't, certainly if somebody read that and then just jumped to the conclusion that anything else, paint or other types of exterior things that don't require a permit, they can just go ahead and do, well, that would be incorrect. So I don't think that there's a legal problem with the way it's worded. We could perhaps put in just an informational line in there to say, by the way, take a look at the historic chapter and take a look at the guidelines to see if what you're doing requires a permit. But legally, I don't actually see an issue with it.
Thank you. And Mr. Inspector Schneider, if possible, could you just more generally address Mr. Ware's concern in terms of any violations of code and safety rules related to this?
Sure can, thank you. I think Attorney Beveridge answered the historic correctly. The question of credentialing is actually in there. So we just adopt SPS 305, which is the state standards for licensing. So Mr. Weir's synopsis of the, say the habitat workers, they are covered under 305. That includes all licensing in the state of Wisconsin. So essentially what we've done with just about everything, in fact, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that doesn't fall under a state agency in this new ordinance. The credentialing would be no different. So while you are required to be a licensed electrician to work for money on somebody's property, you would not be required to be licensed to work on, say, the Habitat House. So it is mimicking the state's administrative code and state statute. So no, we're going to be the same as every other city here, or in the northern half of the state that I've found. So if there's any other questions, I can answer that.
I would also,
thank you.
Another thing that Mr. Weir stated, if I may, when it comes to involving contractors in these types of discussions, it should be noted that DJ Schneider is a master electrician certified in a number of residential and commercial inspections. Scott Amernick, who assisted in the rewrite of this code, is a master plumber. Jimena Christensen is an HVAC specialist and does all of our commercial inspections. The folks that are in your inspection department are probably the most knowledgeable folks on the ground at the construction site. And so having them rewrite the code and understand what the state is essentially telling us that we have to enforce is the most important piece of this puzzle. And so, you know, if we're able to help educate any additional contractors, we will, but reaching out for their opinions on things that are set by state and state guidance isn't really appropriate in this specific situation.
Any other questions or comments from the public? We'll bring it back to the committee for a vote. Seeing none, I bring it back to the committee. Alder Dalton, go ahead.
Never mind.
Okay, bringing it back to the committee. What are your wishes?
I just wanted to mention there's some chat that somebody said a member of the public would like to join the meeting. I don't know what that means, but that was in the chat.
Now I see him. So going back to the public, Mr. Jacobson, do you have any comments? We can't hear you, so I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now, Chairperson?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Warren Jacobson, 1579 Church Street. This is news to me that this rewrite is coming in, but I had spoken to DJ Snyder and Attorney Beveridge concerning this. I have concerns with some of the language in this rewrite because I've been engaged for the last few years as a general contractor and in my own personal home renovation on a number of buildings, both residential and commercial, in this community that have stood for more than 100 years. And one particular change that is in this code, though I have not had a chance to compare this entire code to the existing code, is that is a change with regards to the definition and therefore the application of our inspections department's analysis of the code against the repairs of old buildings. And I did bring this up previously in conversations with Mr. Schneider and with Attorney Beveridge, because there is currently in our code, admittedly, a gray area when it comes to repairing very old architecture, specifically residential houses, because the state of Wisconsin in its uniform dwelling code exempts all repairs from the application of the uniform dwelling code. And in this code, the city would both, again, attempt to bring all repairs under the uniform dwelling code, but then further, by changing the definition of repairs, would put us in a position where any repair to any structural component of an existing dwelling within this city would be required to bring, according to their current analysis, that entire component up to code. And my fear with that is that one of the things that I appreciate very much about Stephen's point is that some of the 100-plus-year-old structures that have stood the test of time used architecture that, if built new today, might not meet code, or more practically speaking, are outside of the expertise and experience of a majority of engineers and professionals within the industry, because they are techniques that are not used anymore. My concern is that as this code is written, it will further and actually exacerbate issues that, as a general contractor and home renovator, I've personally run into, where I'm asked by the inspections department to effectively replace components of buildings that have stood the test of time, actually significantly longer than any of the modern code required constructions, because I am administering a repair of some portion of a building. By removing essentially from the definition every structural component of a building from the definition of repair, we enter into a game where I fear that the result will be a majority of the old buildings and houses in this community will be torn down and replaced with significantly lower quality architecture and materials, rather than repaired to last another century, as I know that they are able to. I was mostly surprised that this code came forward, because I was told explicitly that there would be some opportunities for people to engage in discussion around the rewrite. And I see that this has happened more quickly than I expected, and that I'm not sure that there have been opportunities for people in the industry to participate in that, because there is some consternation around the enforcement of particularly some of these not well articulated areas within our code. And I think that there is more discussion due to understand what we would like to see in this community with a lot of our old buildings. I do not believe that this rewrite really addresses effectively the standard around repair that is wholly a municipal standard, because the state does not have any interest in participating in it. I would like, I guess, an opportunity for there to be more discussions on this before the committee or the council takes action. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Konofsky, this sounds like more of a historic preservation issue. Do you have any comments or a response?
So I think the gentleman didn't quite understand the Chapter 30 rewrite as I and Inspector Schneider interpret the rewrite itself. I don't believe the definition of repair has changed from what's currently in code to what is proposed to be in code. Additionally, if you look at the historic aspect, let me see if I can find it again real quick. I think it provides just clearer guidance under the existing structures section D. Repairs for the purpose of maintenance, or replacements of any existing building or structure which do not involve the structural portions of the building or structures are essentially, I don't want to say grandfathered in, but don't have to come up to current code unless they're being drastically changed or if the occupancy changes. But I would defer that more specific question to Inspection Superintendent Schneider.
That's correct. Historic is always going to be of contention. Here it's specifically stated you can repair, say you have a board that breaks in your old house or building, you can repair that with a piece that's the same. What we don't want is when a portion, and a large portion for that matter, of a building is deteriorated past the point of a simple repair, for that to be left kind of just hanging. So what we have been saying since I've been with the city And prior to that, in the many other municipalities I consulted for, was that we would default back to the state's uniform dwelling code to make those repairs. Otherwise, you're kind of, as Mr. Jacobson kind of referred to, is you're kind of looking back onto architects and engineers that may or may not be qualified. And then if they're not qualified, and it's a homeowner, who's to say that they're qualified also? Whereas if you have a uniform document to refer to, it's my opinion that's definitely the best way to go to make these types of things accessible to homeowners, building owners, and contractors alike.
Alder Nabel.
Thank you, Chair. And Inspector Schneider, I think what your points are is very, very good, because we do have older homes that have been repaired, but they have changed completely to the point of where a kitchen will be put into a basement so that a kitchen can be changed into a bedroom. Things like that, where they get changed, that should be, those are kinds of repairs or changes that are being made, should be looked at and have to have permits to comply with certain regulations, I think. And we have that happen a lot in our existing structures, and find out later on that there's no permit that was even pulled, years ago, and it was done. So I think that we really do have to have this section the way it is, to require that people are going to get that license or permit to make anything that is not just the outside aesthetics, but that really moves around rooms and structure of the building itself. We've all seen many porches that were just, one season porch, but turned into a bedroom. So I think a lot of these are things that this kind of addresses, that people can't go and do.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jacobson, I see your hand up again. I'll allow one more comment, and then we're going to bring it back to committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. I appreciate that. I would note that the change is subtle, but Director, there is a change. If you look at the existing code, the definition of repair is changed in the rewrite to say that any work, and the language is not right in front of me, but any structural work is not a repair. And to talk to the alderperson's comments, I am interested in construction and reconstruction repairs in this community being done to a high standard. I think that the issue that I'm taking in that the subtle changes in this rewrite will make more difficult is that in many situations, what parts of the building are implicated by necessary repairs or alterations that are optional to a building is somewhat of a vague question. What exactly is implicated? And it's often I found myself in discussion with Mr. Schneider about which elements of the building are implicated. The direction that this rewrite takes us is that more of each building, particularly I'm concerned with residential dwelling, single and two family, will be implicated as alterations because the repair definition excludes all structural work. And the implication of that is that those elements of those buildings will be required to come under the UDC. And the UDC, as passed by the state, was not contemplated to apply to existing structures, but rather that it could be allowed to be by municipalities, and specifically the state excludes all repairs, and that includes structural repairs. So the situations that I'm concerned with are ones where we have existing foundations, existing structural walls, existing roof systems, none of which could be built under the UDC and yet have stood for 100 years. and sometimes need repairs as a result of neglect of the roof covering or otherwise neglect of owners, but for the majority can be repaired and last another 100 years. And my concern is by changing the definition of repair, which this rewrite does, it puts us in a position that will then be excluded and not be allowed. That every time that I touch a building, most of which is in great condition, if I'm repairing any of the structural components now, I have to bring the entire thing up to the UDC as if it was new construction. And that's why, I would like there to be more time for discussion, particularly with people in the trades in this community, to talk about where we really want to go with our older building stock, much of which I think can last another century. And I am not really I haven't participated a lot in the historic preservation, but more we just have the fact that a lot of our houses are old and they really can be maintained and repaired. But if they're forced to come up to UDC, most people are just going to tear them down. And I think that would be a tragedy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to bring it back to the committee given all of that. I need somebody to make a motion on whatever direction you wish to take this. And if there's a motion to approve this, I suspect it will come back and be discussed further at Common Council. So what are your wishes?
Chair Alder Nebone here. I had a chat a little earlier with DJ Schneider, and I'm pretty confident that this rewrite follows the state code. So I will move approval of the rewrite.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Leak here, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. With that, our agenda is exhausted and we adjourn at 7:16. Thank you for your patience.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.